Photography for me is something that shows a perspective on an image or an object or something like that. Just one direction of looking at something.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. So you sent me, I don't know if it's a self-portrait or somebody made the photo of you. You have a very kind of a natural, open, positive, smiling face at the camera. It looks like you're in Hong Kong. And behind you, there's Sun Street, which is just so, it's so perfect that it's just kind of pointing at your head. And you have a nice smile. It's you take up like 80%. It's a very sweet portrait. I would say it's in a residential area of Hong Kong. I don't know that it's on Lantau, but what was this situation?
Yeah, so we're actually halfway between Wan Chai and Admiralty in Hong Kong Island. It's one of the little side streets up in there where there's a nice little cafe. And we were just sitting there on one Sunday morning after actually the Kiwi Ball and chilling, having some breakfast there. And it was a photo taken by my wife, Louise. She was just sitting across the small coffee table from me there. So you're on a back streetscape, trees around you. You're kind of outside, but you're in the environment. You're certainly not in the open areas of Hong Kong. And we were sitting there happily watching dogs under the table and of other people, and people just enjoying their Sunday mornings.
Nice. Well, look, I think, if we think of each, either like, for example, a photograph being an expression of, how you want to frame the conversation, right? Whether implicitly or explicitly. I think this kind of sets the tone very nicely for what kind of person you are, as far as how I've seen you and how I've kind of experienced you, which is not especially flashy and yet warm and inviting. And I don't know if I'm the only person who says this, but kind of no pretensions. No, I mean, is that a very Kiwi, a New Zealand character trait, you'd say, or would you say that's just kind of how you're made?
Partly Kiwi and partly even more so me. And yeah, like you say, in the back there's the photo that says Sun Street. And I always try and look on the bright side of things or look for the positive angle. There's always something that can be worse or something worse you could say to someone or that. So why not just keep going with the more encouraging positive side and then work out where your differences are. You might say on that negative, darker side. And then you can work out how the conversation can move together and you see common interest or objective. So that too is an interesting photo because that's a pretty clean cut looking hairdo on that shot as well. I've gone from hair lengths that are way beyond my shoulder, all variety of different coloured hair and things like that through my life, and it's one of those things people go, "Oh, what's your hair up to?" kind of now, and it's just like, well, I just felt like getting a short haircut. Oh, I didn't get round to getting it cut for a while. And so it's that kind of approach, I'd say, that you're airing is like, how do we get going and make fun of this opportunity? Let's see the bright side of things.
Right. So, you said you got to Hong Kong 15 or so years ago. So what brought you out here?
Well, I actually had a franchise for team building and personality training business that we had. There was four of us, my wife Louise and I, plus two other people had this franchise. And we're all Kiwis, and there was a person running it up here in Hong Kong. So we'd been traveling up here for a year and a half or so before we moved up to Hong Kong. And we took on the challenge, you might say, of coming to a new country and running a franchise around people development, getting people working together in teams in a stronger, more understanding way, because we all know that there's different styles of people in the world. And I think that's what I have enjoyed through my kind of university life, realizing, or school life type of thing, as well as sports things, that there's these people called introverts that don't really like talking on radio shows, or they just want to read books. And, how do you work with those people? And it's this kind of fun that it's like, I'm into so much like technology and wanting to try out new things, but it's also like, well, what's the old way of doing this? That might be the best. So with that interest of trying to get people to try new things, but know what the best option might still be the old way. And that's where I got into the team building side of things. And it works really well for me to say, right, now I need to be quiet and let someone else think about that for a while and give them time to come back and respond. So I'm quite happy thinking and talking at the same time, or I have to talk to think, some people tell me.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know this about you. I've only known you in the capacity of somebody who goes out into the world and talks about conservation issues, indirectly or directly. I hear you on the radio, RTHK, the main sort of public radio here in Hong Kong. Yep. Walk me through that evolution of you, coming out here to do, I had no idea you're doing team building.
Yeah. Well, maybe there's a little bit of background to kind of steps back between that, which are kind of these life kind of little journeys along the way. So if I try and do that in a semi-short version, but it's probably going to take a few minutes. Brought up on a dairy farm in New Zealand, so had animals around you. We're about 8 k's up the river from the beach. We'd go off to the lakes, we'd go to the bush. You're always out and about. You saw the life cycles happening around you. There's life and death happening regularly, almost daily around you, and interactions. And that's really got me excited in nature, but I love numbers. And I was actually studying accounting and economics when at high school. Because I was good with numbers. I didn't like languages, Or I tried to get out of English as quickly as I could, and I managed to get out of that in my last year at school. But last year at high school, there was an earthquake in Edgecombe, New Zealand, North Island, for those, middle North Island. And when the earthquake had happened, it wasn't the first earthquake we'd been through. The house had got shaken off its piles, and you're kind of going, man, there's a bit of damage around. Luckily, no one was hurt. And a few days later, or maybe a week or so later, some land surveyors went past the gate and with these levelling kind of stuff. And I said, what are you measuring? Inquisitive boy leaning over the farm fence. And they said, just the new heights. And I knew the farm had changed because the back drain now was no longer running. It was kind of semi-tidal. The farm had dropped 2.05 meters. Now, for most people, if you put your hand up and tip your fingers up, that's about the length. We're talking, it's the normal room height of a building in a house or that. So it's like, well, how do you measure that? Where's the reference point? Where's zero? If the whole land's moved, I'm like, what? And then they started showing me some stuff, and I started seeing, because they came back the next day to repeat their observations, and it was like, wow, this is kind of cool technology. So I ended up doing a land surveying degree, went down to Dunedin and Otago. And what I loved about that degree was I didn't want to be a property boundary surveyor, someone who was putting a peg in the corner of a property. And that's like digging up compost heaps and things like that. I wanted to play with technology and do different things. But I realized the degree had a really interesting mix of business, law, presentation, communication. It was quite a broad degree because it was setting up people to run their own surveying business, which is how industry worked. Ended up working for the New Zealand government and was very lucky when GPS technology was first starting to be put into surveying and engineering. So I was traveling the country, training people on equipment, flying to amazing parts of New Zealand and also the back gullies of New Zealand. And I mean the back of factories, the back of industrial sites. And it just got me thinking about our development approach, how we're polluting our country in so many ways. And that's globally. That's everyone's country I'm talking about here, not just New Zealand. New Zealand is looked at as being clean and green. But in perspective, when you consider we're about 5 million people spread across the same size as Japan, and what are they, 140, it's pretty easy to hide your bad behavior.
Yeah.
So New Zealand's done a lot of work at tidying itself up, and that's part of what I hope I've been part of. So this surveying degree, and then moving into working with government for 9 years, where you're writing standards and policy and trying to convince stakeholders to become more supportive of the direction you want to take the survey, I was able to use that at the same time as I was doing my volunteer work in the nature space.
Oh, wow.
And this is where I would be helping with tree planting and bird recovery programs. And there was one particular one that I was on where I took 2 weeks holiday to go down to the bottom of the South Island. There's an island off there called Stewart Island, and next to that is another one called Whenua. And it is where they have the kakapo, which is New Zealand's flightless parrot.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And I'm so amazing. Yeah, just look kakapo, Kakapo.
Yeah.
Kakapo Recovery Project. Back in the mid-'80s, there was only about 50 birds known in the world.
Wow.
And when I was there in the, what was this? It would have been 2000, early 2000, 2001. We'd got to about 87. And what we're doing is helping the birds continue to breed. Mm-hmm. So one day I was walking along holding a red toolbox, a little small toolbox. And inside that were 3 fertile kakapo eggs.
Oh, wow.
And you're walking over muddy terrain, roots, slogging through things. And you're going, it's not very often you get to carry, let's say, 3% of the world's population of a species.
Wow.
I don't want to fall over now, do I? That's not going to look good on the ceiling. But it was just like, wow.
How amazing.
That's just like, yeah. And then people say to me, oh, wow, that'd be cool to be part of. And I say to them, here in Hong Kong, we have things like the Chinese white dolphin, pink dolphin, or the finless porpoise. They're around 100. Guys, you can be involved with projects just about anywhere when you stop and think about it. And that got me really deep into wanting to do more about conservation. And I'd been studying in Australia for my PhD, deep into GPS technology, high precision, long distance surveys for millimeter accuracy was what I was studying. But we'd go out and camping. And of course, Australia's got everything dangerous, basically. Don't touch anything because it's going to bite or kill you. And compared to New Zealand, where practically nothing can kill you, it was a good learning curve.
Wow.
But with people that were spotting cool plants and orchids, as well as the bats and all this stuff, got back to New Zealand and was just reminded of the variety of nature. Mm-hmm. And then this opportunity with work came up to travel to Antarctica.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was a super special opportunity. So I was 7 weeks down on the ice, went down on the American program. So hanging out with the 2,000 odd people at McMurdo, and about 3-4K away, there's the little New Zealand base of 70 to 90 people.
Oh, wow.
But when you're out surveying, and we had the opportunity to go out, we're super lucky, in the sense you're going to places where there's rocks in Antarctica. Of course, that's where you need to put survey marks because we're looking at movement and that. And of course, near rocks, there are penguins, there are seals. And so you had this wonderful nature experience. But when we went to South Pole, and you're a couple of K from the South Pole, and this is only 2.5 kilometers high at this point, but it's dead flat, it's white, and there's no sound at all.
Oh, wow.
And you only hear your breathing,
and
you only get a little bit of ear noise going past you with the wind. And then, of course, when the wind's strong, you've got that wind noise.
Sure.
But you're just there quiet, nothing. You can't smell anything.
Wow.
Well, that's not quite true. Of course, you can smell yourself because you've been sweating it out and it's hard work type of things. But there's no other smells. And then when we came back from Antarctica, landed back in Christchurch, there's dust, there's noise, there's smell, there's all of this stuff. And you're just going, wow, our senses. What parts of our senses are we using most of the time that we don't realize are turned on? And I think that's the part in Hong Kong. Not many people can go to a quiet place. You always have air conditioning. You always have road noise. It's very hard just to listen to the bugs chirping. And of course, in Antarctica, there was no bugs chirping on the grass. There was no birds flying past. There was no bees. It was a really interesting reminder. And so all of that together with my conservation interests and technology and doing things, I decided I couldn't write standards any longer for the government department. And so it was a case of I was writing, not interacting with people to really develop the standards. You were doing a slight isolation because I was a little bit still, junior in the rankings.
Sure.
And so I went out and ended up working for an engineering company under my own standards that I'd written at the government doing survey work. Now, there's always a good practice point. So if you ever need to write a document, just make sure you switch your location, your perspective, and then try and see how well you've written those instructions. And that was a wonderful learning curve. And of course, I was able to feed back to the colleagues this different perspective. And we're going back to the photography idea. It's like I now knew a lot more because I was doing something rather than thinking I knew how things were done. And this is the fun of trying stuff out that I love. And that's where the technology kind of got me into talking to people about technology and realizing that I could train people on technology. And that's where the team building thing came through more and more at work. So I became doing like ISO 9001 training, helping people with new equipment, so procedures and that, where I'd go into people and say, we've got this manual. I know you use it. And I say, well, I don't use it fully to them because I didn't. And I know that you will be breaking the rules there somewhere.
Right.
And I want to know why you're breaking the rules, because I know you know which rules you're breaking, because there must be something wrong with the way the manual's written.
Sure.
So let's understand what's wrong with the manual, look at the risks of why the manual was written a certain way, and then look at what you're seeing as a better way of doing it. And that was a great way to interact with people, because it's not saying, hey, you got to do this right, clipboard officer. No. It was, can we improve this? And why are we making the decision that this is better?
Right. So just if you don't mind, so you came here doing a sort of a team building under this franchise or whatever, but was it a sector specific? Was it concentrated, for example, in engineering consulting, or was it just broad, anybody who wants this?
Anyone. So if anyone's familiar with things like Myers-Briggs or DISC or Hampton, it was a variation on that. And it was a version, I'd had a number of these, being government department, a large engineering consultancy firm, you've had these team building days, but they often were weird things that I never remembered. And the Myers-Briggs ones, I think it's great. It's just that I don't remember the name, even to this day. M-I-N-E-N-T, whatever. Whereas the simple thing was, I'm a supporter, or I'm a star, or I'm a creator, deal maker, or I'm a mechanic. And all of those words, you kind of instantly know, I think that's the kind of person. And then the order that those people work together, if you say to my wife, Louise, who's very much an introvert, she's a Lord type of person. She's kind of watching the numbers, collecting everything's right numbers. And I say, should we do this? And the first thing is, well, how are we doing that? It's like, no, that's the word that I don't know. That's like a sword chopping me down. It's like, I don't know how we're going to do it. It's just like, should we do it? It sounds like a good idea. And then you need to work to the people that know other people, i.e. through the support deal network, so that you can go, this person's tried it. They know this person that's doing that. Then you build up your bit of how. Then you bring it through to the mechanic that goes, right, now we can really make it, fine tune it. Think of the motor mechanics, like we can get this engine running really cool by doing this and this. But they got the general concept. Don't get them to build the car, just get them to fine tune it type of thing. That's where, for me, it was sector wide, but of course, my contacts, my background from an engineering, surveying, and environment attracted people that I was meeting from that space. But that was the only reason.
Okay. I know that you are, by interest, profession, training, somebody who you're a good storyteller. I mean, what I love is that now that I'm getting to know you better, somehow we've managed to travel to New Zealand, then Australia, and then Antarctica. I had no idea. And then we come back to Hong Kong. And one of the things that I find really amazing, so for example, in Canada, when we would kind of make dinner, Friday night dinner, there was always soup, right? And you could just leave soup overnight on the stove and then eat it in the morning, and it's fine. Whereas here, like in Hong Kong, I feel like they're the sort of I don't want to call it the viral load, but there's so much alive around you, is that you leave something outside overnight, you've got everything from these mega cockroaches to, it's going to get funky like so quickly.
Yep.
Yeah.
You do have to remind listeners too that you're probably talking in parts of Canada like parts of New Zealand. If we're out bush in the campaign going mountains and that, when we say put something outside or leave it out, the hut you're staying in, sometimes it's frozen outside. I mean, It's ice cold, so it's like colder than the fridge. So good luck to anything that's going to eat that. But I do know, even in the house situation, what you're talking about. There's critters crawling around and flying around and jumping around all the time here.
Sure. I mean, which is really interesting to have the juxtaposition of, for example, Antarctica, where you said when you go to the pole, it's quiet. You barely smell anything, and for example, I live in a world of smells, so I could see, like, for myself, you just telling that story really kind of raised that for me.
And taking that part a little bit, because while we're filling in time waiting for 8 hours of GPS measurements, we were next to both like Scott and Munstan's huts, and we were lucky enough to go inside those. And you walk into this hut, and here's the seal that's been on a table. No, penguin, not seal. Penguin. It's been on a table for over 100 years. And there's a biscuit tin still sitting there with biscuits next to it. And you walk in and going, there's no smell, but I can see a dead animal. That's strange. The brain's got, it's like there's one of the senses is missing something here. What's going on?
Wow.
And just that again, is part of that things that we walk into a situation and our perspective is going to be, we're expecting this to happen or get this experience. And that's what I love about looking at things from different ways or different perspectives.
Well said. I'm going to take this moment to switch over to the next photo. So is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.